When I was 17 years old, I decided to direct my own feature-length film as part of my Year 12 art project. It was a weird hybrid of a lot of different genres, script issues, and very terrible acting, especially since I played pretty much every character. I struggle to look back at that film, but it is a proud part of my history. But I could never understand in retrospect why I decided to name the movie The Line of Nature. Then I found a movie called Fatal Deviation, and didn't feel so bad about it.
Ho 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 ho! Delightfully devilish, Seymour.
Yes, everybody, welcome back to Delightfully Devilish, the show where we discuss films that all at once meet the criteria of being the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm your host, Jukebox Harry, and today we are looking at possibly the single worst martial arts film ever made. Fatal Deviation is a 1998 direct-to-video Irish action film which, according to its VHS cover, is a classic good versus evil action flick mixed with kicks, guns, motorcycles, and a hot babe. I think the word classic is used very loosely, but I think that cover can give you a pretty clear idea of what to expect. Nonetheless, it still will not set you up for a movie like this. Now, of all the films that I've reviewed on this show so far, Samurai Cop and Future War would be the two that have the most little attention paid to production values, and yet Fatal Deviation actually manages to beat both of them. Fatal Deviation is the incredibly misguided vanity project of Jimmy Bennett, the martial artist, stuntman, and actor who has worked on films such as The Medallion, The Lone Ranger, and even Jersey Boys. He made this film when he heard that Hong Kong producers had been tipped off about him and wanted to work with him but needed to see some of his efforts, and he had no prior screen experience at this time, either in front of or behind the camera. So frantically he started shooting this movie with no budget in place and just pulled together whoever he could get to help him out on the project. So this is actually a feature-length home movie made on essentially no budget. And the creator is well aware that this film has entered into so bad it's good territory, but it has also helped to establish him a small audience around the world and given a bit of a boost of recognition to his career. So let's have a look at Ireland's first and so far only feature-length martial arts film. Before the film even begins, there are terrible signs, one of them being the Windows Movie Maker-esque website text, which is written in the papyrus font. I tried going to that website, by the way, the link is dead now. And this is the pace the intro credits are given to us. Seriously, we really don't get much time to actually read the names of the no-name individuals that made this film happen.
This has been my home for 10 years. Every day I've trained to be as good a martial artist as my father. I am a man now, and it's time I went home. I need to discover who I am, what it is I should do, and what happened to my father.
If this has been your home for 10 years, then what home are you going back to? And more importantly, who are you? It's difficult to fully discern what he's saying over the sound of the rough music, and the visual quality of the film is just awful, but after these intro credits, you had to see this coming. We get a lot of shots of this guy just walking through several generic Irish settings as rough music plays, even sometimes in slow motion. A lot of films that are very short on ideas like to just use footage of characters moving across the landscape as a means of padding out the running time and trying to get the movie to feature length. These movies would include Jim Carter and You're the Hunter from the Future. Still, this would have been the appropriate time to actually put the intro credits in. That way we could have had a little bit more time to actually read the names. After nearly 2 straight minutes of walking, the guy arrives at a rundown Irish house. First he tries to pull a lock off with his hands, then he manages to somehow open it with a large rock. Yeah, the audio quality actually got worse when he opened the door. He looks at several items in the dimly lit room. Things briefly turn black and white as I anticipate flashbacks are about to happen, but as it turns out, that's literally just a color glitch in the film. I've never seen that in a movie before. Wow, this is a special kind of low-grade movie. Oh, never mind, we are getting a flashback to some guy doing martial arts in front of a fire. Jesus, I was just making a crack about the film being black and white earlier, but this movie is actually using that technique. Then we cut to a supermarket where some random thugs steal a guy's empty trolley with ridiculous ease. They also throw potatoes around because, you know, it's an Irish movie. And then there's some voice going on in the background, but it's hard to hear over the ambience. I don't know who these thugs are, but they look like they're having a good time.
You're very brave to be harassing young women.
Okay, so it's obvious this guy is a Jean-Claude Van Damme fan because he just copied 2 of his most iconic moves. Still, we don't have a name for this guy.
I'm not paying you to sit around here on your arse smoking.
No, boss.
I don't know that you can pay anyone enough to point a gun at their head, you feckin' idiot.
Here! To the ridge!
Yes, boss.
Point a gun at someone's head and then give it to them straight after. Basically, I don't know who any of these characters are, or even if there is gonna be a story, but I think I need to stop expecting anything as such up at this point, even though I'm only 7 minutes in. Strong man. We get a montage of this guy cleaning up his old shack, seemingly trying to search for a plot or script for this film inside of it. Then he has another flashback. Apparently our hero was bullied as a kid, entirely in slow motion, and learned to run away from his problems and teleport between destinations. But he found solace learning martial arts from an elusive figure. The women started a conversation about our protagonist, Jimmy Bennett. Yes, they literally referred to the character by the actor's name. They couldn't even come up with a name for him.
I see the young Bennett boy's home. Not Jimmy Bennett. Yeah? Oh God, I hope there's no trouble.
Is that Dee from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Why don't you know about his father?
Or is that Dee? Jesus Christ, so many women in this film look like Dee. They walk off shortly after starting the conversation, so we never even get to hear what they're talking about. Two guys pull up and start accosting Dee, but in comes Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I don't think the girl needs help across the road. Why don't you Boy Scouts go and play in the woods?
You little...
Okay, if that isn't the single worst fight scene I've ever seen, then I really don't know what is. But I also don't know why they spliced in that footage of Monk Santa. He returns home only to find that his eggs have been broken in the fight. Just talk to Dee's father, I'm sure he can get you an egg.
Can I offer you a nice egg in this trying time?
Yeah, he's got an egg, you might...
If you don't get that reference, Danny DeVito plays Dee's father in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. See, that's something you could actually be spending your time watching as opposed to this movie. And on top of everything else this film gets wrong, this guy can't even light a cigarette.
Why don't we get him to work for us?
Working for us?
Why not? Wouldn't it be ironic to have the son of the man I killed working for us?
That would be ironic, but I don't know that irony is good criteria for hiring someone. Much of this film plays out in complete silence, as in they couldn't even get stock music for this film, so it just happens like a poorly lit silent film half of the time. To his credit, Jimmy can do some pretty badass splits. He's got some of Jean-Claude Van Damme's moves down pretty well. Dee comes to visit him.
Hi.
I just called by to say thank you.
Well, come in. I'm sorry, the place is still a bit of a...
The guy just does not know what to do with his hands at that moment.
This is for you.
Thanks.
I baked it myself.
I doubt it.
And this pie very obviously changes size between takes.
Look, I've got to go.
But you literally just got here. Come on, this isn't a Tommy Wiseau movie. You can stay for a little longer. Very few things actually happen in this movie, so there are a lot of extended shots of people just transitioning between locations and doing arbitrary tasks just to fill in the gaps. And when plot points do drop in, they're as random as this.
Somebody wants to see you.
Who?
Mr. Lachlan.
Haha, get it? Because the gung is Asian and so is martial arts?
Would you like to work for me?
I don't know.
Didn't you see all those fancy cars outside?
No, I didn't. Even though you gave me a shot, there was very clearly not fancy cars in that shot. Then we cut to a fair which apparently opens at 7:30 PM but is visibly happening in daylight. Jesus Christ, this movie is literally a treasure hunt of bombastic, bad filmmaking decisions. We get a lot of random shots of Jimmy at the fair, and then a flashback to Karate Guy apparently being killed with a sword, and then a training montage which is mostly impossible to see. Also, a tournament of some sort is happening.
The tournament is coming up. I want everyone to make sure that Seagull wins it.
We win this, we take control of this town.
Huh, sounds like your town has some pretty shitty power dynamics.
Who are you people?
Good question.
The question is, who are you?
The question is not who I am, the question is who are you? I know who I am.
Come on, Nicholas, we're leaving. This guy's crazy.
Good idea. Then he gets refused entry into a bar by two bouncers, so he just beats the both of them up. So, is he the hero or the villain? Like, I honestly can't tell with that action. Predictably, this is a precursor to a bar fight. The fight scenes are the highlight of the film, because while everything else is just bad and boring, these are actually good bad. And like I said, our hero actually does know how to fight. He just doesn't know how to actually put the scene together in an objectively good manner. The bar fight itself is probably the highlight of the film. And one of the mystics invites him to that tournament, so he goes and beats up a punching bag to the sound of unlicensed music from a Super Nintendo racing game.
Your training begins tomorrow.
See, I thought he was already training, so what has he been doing this whole time? The next morning he has a training montage done to the tune of bagpipes, and I have to say, this is a particularly strange blend. Did anyone ever stop and think, martial arts movie training montage, bagpipe soundtrack? Apparently this guy did. I don't know why he did. The old guy doesn't really teach him anything, he mostly just does his own thing. As a matter of fact, everything good that he displays seems to be knowledge that he already possesses and not something that this old gobshite teaches him. He also stops to ride a horse with Dee at one point.
What's going on now?
Two guys out here want to see you.
What do they want?
I don't know, boss.
Why don't you just ask them? Then there's a picnic composed of loose pieces of fruit scattered everywhere.
No one has ever done what you did for me the other day.
Are you referring to the time Jimmy kicked that guy into that large pile of toilet paper, or are you referring to the time that he stopped and accosted those two guys on the street who were getting up in your face? Because, yeah, I fully believe that no one else has ever done that for you, because, see, get this, those are not tasks that people frequently do. He leans in to kiss her while holding a fake flower between them, which I thought would have interfered with that, but then he gets distracted by motorcycles. But Dee sniffs the flower, seemingly curious as to if it's polyethylene or polyurethane. Jimmy knocks one of the goons off his motorcycle and then beats up another before stealing his bike. He picks up Dee as the film turns into perhaps the least impressive chase scene ever made. Jimmy reenacts one of Jean-Claude Van Damme's best stunts from the movie Hard Target as he shoots everyone off their motorcycles. And Dee gets kidnapped. Jimmy returns home and reads a note. We don't actually get to see what the note says, but it warrants making him run off. And then we get another fight scene complete with hypermasculine screams. The fight continues, as do the flashbacks, which repeatedly show the exact same footage as before every single time. Then Jimmy's suddenly by a fire with Monk Santa, and we finally read the note where the word loose has been misspelled, and I honestly can't tell whether that was intentional or not, because with the lackluster quality of everything else in this film, it honestly could go either way.
If you win the tournament, you'll break their power.
But what about Nicola?
Don't worry, we'll get her back.
You want to elaborate on that? I mean, I don't really want to hear you talk, but I'd like to think that you did actually have a plan. Jimmy goes on a sad walking montage, which incurs flashbacks to the scene that we literally just saw, and to a sex scene that never happened. Then Jimmy starts dodging fire sticks, which to his credit actually does have some danger to it, even when it's done in the worst way. Another Van Damme film gets plagiarized as Jimmy furiously kicks at a tree like in Kickboxer. He also throws part of a tree.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
It turns out that the tournament is some kind of ancient Irish kumite. So now the film is copying Bloodsport, or possibly The Quest. I mean, they're both Jean-Claude Van Damme films, and this guy obviously has an affinity for copying that guy's style. The first fight is near impossible to actually discern, and the second is slightly more visible, but of course Jimmy's is easier to make out, though not much more enjoyable. And there's even some strange editing techniques. This entire scene is one brief generic fight scene after another, and honestly, this is what most of the film should have been, but the film becomes a different kind of repetitive from here on, as every fight is just as boring as the next. And there aren't any that really stand out, unless you count the moment that Jimmy pulls this Jean-Claude Van Damme move. It's really hard to imagine the last time I was actually bored watching fight scenes in a movie, but Fatal Deviation really is a special case. The plot, or lack thereof, just completely stops moving until Jimmy chases two men out of the room.
Everything's okay, boss.
We even get a shot of a naked guy in the most white trash bathtub you've ever seen. Jimmy drives into their compound and comes under fire, which results in a car crash which probably cost this movie most of its budget. And then he does a classic jumping away from explosion shot. Okay, so I can add Fatal Deviation to the list of top 3 moving away from bad CGI'd explosion shots I've ever seen in a movie. It is now up there with Mortal Kombat Annihilation and She-Devil. And then ugly naked guy goes running from his bathtub in a hilarious extended shot. Jimmy fights his way through the crowd with a whole lot of unimpressive stunts and equally unimpressive shootouts. He even tries firing 2 guns in a crossfire. He manages to rescue Dee from a predictable hostage situation, breaks another guy's neck, and then lives happily ever after with Dee, until the old gobshite comes back for one final moment.
You killed my father. Now I'm gonna kill you, just like I killed your son.
No! And then the film ends at the 70-minute mark before we're treated to 6 minutes of outtakes, making of footage, and of course the outro credits. Is Fatal Deviation a bad film?
Is that it? Just that one word?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes!
I don't want to imagine that there is anyone on planet Earth who actually thinks that Fatal Deviation is an objectively good film, but my faith in humanity has really been shaken by how a lot of people have behaved during the COVID pandemic. So honestly, yes, it's sad to say that it's very possible that people actually think this movie is good, but even Jimmy Bennett himself knows that this film is not. Fatal Deviation was made solely to show off the martial arts skills of Jimmy Bennett, and to its credit, it does that. It might do it in one of the worst possible ways with some pretty awful visual resolution, but the man has some degree of talent. But still, what's more amazing is just how little effort was actually put into trying to put a cohesive narrative into this film. This movie is half every Steven Seagal movie ever and half Bloodsport. The stunts very consistently plagiarized from Jean-Claude Van Damme films, which Bennett admits to being a big fan of. But to his credit, he did later get to work with Van Damme on films such as Kickboxer Retaliation, which was good, Blackwater, which was shit, and Kill 'Em All, which I'm yet to see. He's also apparently become good friends with Jean-Claude Van Damme in real life, so the man got to live his dream, which is pretty cool. But nonetheless, his film screams of sheer emptiness. Too much of the film is empty shots of characters just doing arbitrary tasks, all of which linger for ridiculous amounts of time in an effort to extend this thing to feature length. Considering it stops at 70 minutes before turning into outtakes and other arbitrary footage, it just barely passes. And if you consider how much of this film is reused flashback footage as well, it cuts pretty damn close. When characters speak, it's one thing that they don't have anything to say, while it's another that it's often difficult to hear them with the film's awful sound quality, and the repetitive use of stock sound effects or frequent absence of them is also terrible. Fatal Deviation certainly has some degree of qualities that are so bad that they're good, so the film does get occasionally hilarious, but the problem is that the standard for every decision made in this film is so minimal that it's an ugly mess that gets very repetitive in its badness ridiculously fast. It's one thing that the story makes no sense and the acting is terrible while the stunts are all ridiculous, because those are all enjoyable qualities, but the sheer amount of pointless footage and visually incomprehensible shots really overwhelm the experience. Fatal Deviation gets 1 motorcycle shootout out of 10. Everything in the movie is low grade to the point of being hilariously beyond belief at times, but unfortunately, the sheer incomprehensible nature of a lot of the visuals and the large amount of pointlessness in a lot of the shots really just overwhelms the experience. And that does it for today's episode of Delightfully Devilish, you guys. If there are any movies you want to see me discuss on this show, please leave them in the comment section below. If you want to see more episodes, please hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, until next time, I have been your host, Jukebox Harry. Peace.